7 minutes after 12. A very good afternoon to one and all, and welcome back to the Mid Morning Show with me, Julie Ali. And now we're going to be talking about something pretty important. It is April is in fact recognized as Autism Month, and our guest Amarta Myeza is a program manager of the Heart Program at Autism Resources South Africa. Amarta, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. Lovely to have you here.
Hi, Julie. Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
Okay. I know whenever we talk, over the past years, every time April comes around, we talk autism and, we look at different aspects of the condition. And, some people have such wonderful, heartwarming stories, but through all of that, you also hear the pain of
Oh,
having a
yes.
child with autism. And because it's on a spectrum, some kids actually thrive. They do brilliantly. We've also been told about children who have autism who actually have streaks of genii within them. But on the other hand, there are children on the spectrum that don't do well at all. They need so much more support than a regular. And do forgive me if I'm using the incorrect terminology here, or a normal child, or a child, that doesn't have any difficulties or disabilities. So this is huge. Autism is a huge issue, and I think you will agree with me. Being who you are and the position you hold, that more awareness needs to be done, and apart from the awareness, support needs to be given to parents of children with autism. Welcome.
Thank you so much. You are 100% correct there. Because autism is such a big spectrum and a varying spectrum, you have the one side where you see all these individuals who, like you said, they're thriving in whatever space they're in, whether it's a mainstream school, if they're homeschooling. These kids seem, for lack of a better word, you'd look at them, you're like, well, this kid's typical. What do you mean that they're struggling with autism? Then on the other hand, you've got the other side of the spectrum, and it's not necessarily like a line, a scale, it's not linear. But we look at the other side and we look at the different sectors in which an individual can be challenged. And you've got individuals who are sitting at home who cannot get out of their room because their anxiety is just too high, or the sensory system is not actually being supported. They don't know what to do. And in turn, their families are struggling. Your previous speaker, I heard the end of the conversation there, and she was talking about how your parents and the family need to be on the same page. And I completely agree. It's the same with autism. Your team supporting the person needs to be on the same page, and all we coming from how can we work together to support this individual. And so Autism Awareness Month is great. We can give more information, we can tell more about what's going on, but there's definitely a lot needed in terms of acceptance so that we can actually make it more inclusive, have things that actually benefit all autistic individuals.
And that's that is, I should imagine, the operative word regarding Autism Month this time around. It's about inclusion. But before we get to inclusion, what does it mean? How should it look? How do different, strata of society come on board to make, autism that much more inclusive? I'm wondering about the parents. You know, I'm a mother, I'm a granny, in fact. And sometimes the kids, they tend to irritate you, they wear you down, and you
Oh
just
yeah.
kind of feel, just, leave me alone, get on with whatever it is that you're doing. And I've had enough of this, and you take some time out, or you even scold them when they getting on your nerves.
Yeah.
What happens to parents with a child with autism? What happens when they have that that breakdown moment,
Mm.
when they feel, I've had way too much, I can't any longer. Is there a chill out time for parents with children of autism? Because when I think about it and apply my mind, it just sounds so exhausting.
And I think you've pinpointed something that a lot of individuals, parents of autistic individuals, really feel at the moment is we're here, we're learning as much as we can. We want to support people. We really want to be a part of the change. But how do you do it every day? Because you're also tired, you also have work, you still need to make dinner, you still got all these responsibilities. Um, and I think that's where the birth of Autism Resources came from, because Autism Resources was actually founded by parents themselves. Parents who have autistic kids, the dad himself is autistic. And they came from, number one, we want to get the right tools. We'll talk about the inclusivity. We want to make that happen. But Autism Resources also came from the non-practical resources. And that's where Heart Program comes in. How do we actually support parents, not just training and not just understanding, but what are practical things you can do as a parent to make sure you can get a little bit of breathing room? Because the reality is we all have mental health that we need to take care of. And if we're not getting that break, how do you pour from an empty cup? How can I still look after my kids when I feel like I am exhausted? So I'd say in general, a lot of parents are still struggling. A lot of parents, they don't get the breaks. And I think what's worse is sometimes you feel a bit isolated from your community, because not everybody understands. So you tend to sit back at home and you say, I don't want to be embarrassed because my kid is stimming, because you might see them stimming, but on the outside to other people, it looks like your child's naughty, or it looks like they're just disobedient and loud and interrupting. And so there's also stigma that comes with that. And there's a whole lot of judgments and perceptions. So I think aside from just the actual chill out time, parents also need more support to be, okay, I just want someone who understands me and can say, okay, cool, I'm not judging you for your child's behavior right now.
We look at the issues around awareness, acceptance, and inclusion.
Mm,
Um, Break that down for us. And of course, once again, I'm emphasizing that, we're focusing on inclusion and how's that going to look? And how do we make this, not only children with autism, but children with any disability
mm,
needs to be felt part of the whole society, and also to feel included, to feel okay, to feel whole. And if
yeah,
we don't accept them and include them, they're not going to feel that way.
no. You ask such a beautiful and important question. What is the difference between all of this? Um, because let's start with this. For every human, in order, one of the most important things that we feel is we want to feel like we belong. No matter what community it's a part of, we want to feel a sense of belonging so that we know there are people who understand me and I feel like I can just be myself with them. So, to get to that sense of belonging, we have to go through the stages. So, we start with awareness. Awareness is saying, okay, this is autism, this is what it can look like. So, I can tell you that sometimes in autism, you have individuals who will verbally stim. That's when they make sounds with their mouths, or they will maybe repetitively use words or phrases that they like. Um, in particular, I work with a group of kids in a learning center, and a lot of them like to use slang they hear on TikTok. They like to watch videos and they'll repeat that in order to try and regulate themselves. So our awareness is just saying, okay, cool. I kind of understand what that person's doing. I know what that is, what trait it is. Moving to acceptance is saying, okay, I understand the stimming, but I'm also not going to stop it because I realize that this individual needs it to regulate. And it most likely means that they're not feeling so great right now. Maybe they're feeling anxious. Maybe they're feeling a bit overwhelmed by the environment. There's something going on in their system that's saying, I don't feel too good. So we're moving from I know about it to I know about it, but I'm not going to make a decision that's going to harm it. So if we're still just in the awareness stage, I might just say, hey, you're bothering people. Please stop that. I'm not going to actually let the child be. Where we all need to move to, and I think we're slowly making those shifts. It'll take time, it'll take more understanding, but where we're trying to shift to is inclusion. That is where we're saying now we have spaces to not get the individual to that overwhelming point in the first place. We don't want them to get to the point where they feel like they need to stim to feel better. We want them to have a space where they say, I don't need to stim actually, because I'm not being pushed to my boundaries, because I have a dark room that I can go and block out the light and actually feel a bit better about the input that's going around me, what's happening with my surroundings. So I think getting to inclusion is saying, let's make spaces that accommodate different learning profiles, different behavior types, different sensory profiles. And that comes along with knowing the tools that we can use and the supports that we can use and the resources we can use.
Okay, it's 18 after 12. We've got to go for an ad break. And for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, Amarta, I do need you to, and you will explain when we get back from the ad break, you keep referring to a word called stimming with children with autism. So I'd like you to break that down and explain
Of
to
course.
us what exactly it is that you're talking about. Please stay with us.
It's a new beginning. It's a new era. Salam Media, humanitarian journalism.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness. And every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Dad, these Frymax chips are so tasty.
Wow, that really takes me back. My dad bought me a Frymax chips every day after school. They were my favorite when I was your age as well. Quality is at the very heart of what we do, and that's why we ensure that every Frymax packet is filled with the beautiful goodness and flavor-packed taste that you've come to expect from us since 1982. Frymax, from generation to generation.
For the first time, I can dream again.
The Africa Muslims Agency Orphan Hope Program provides the food, clothing, and basic support needed by thousands of children across the world. Every child deserves a chance at a hopeful future.
For 50,000 trans, you can transform our lives with the AMA Orphan Hope Program.
Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
You South African, of course. You anxious about the future. We've got you covered. Build on your wealth portfolio with Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange. Visit us at 151 Stephen Dlamini Road, Musgrave, Durban, or call us on 031 202 4700 for more information. Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange, your passport to gold investment.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media, your humanitarian broadcaster.
We're talking beyond awareness at 12:21 p.m. right here on the Mid-Morning Show with me, Julie Ali. And our guest is Amarta Myeza. What an exotic sounding name. She is the program manager of the Heart Program at Autism Resources South Africa, and we're going to ask her to unpack that for us a little later on in the interview. But right now, I want to understand what's the meaning of the word stimming, as I'm sure most of our viewers would like to know as well.
And I'm glad you asked, Julie, because I take it for granted working in the field. I'm just like, stimming, I know exactly what we're talking about. But to break it down, essentially what stimming is an individual gets overstimulated to a point that they feel that they cannot function in what they're doing. So sometimes I like to think about it in my own context. I'm busy working on a report that I need to work on, and I'm actually hearing the TV in the background, and I can maybe hear the neighbors' kids playing outside, and I'm busy thinking about something else, and my brain's a bit too overstimulated with everything that's going on. So what an autistic individual might do is when I get overwhelmed, I do something called stimming. And that is repetitive behavior, repetitive vocalizations or words, basically doing something that will bring calm to my brain again. It's important that we think about autism as what are the traits and characteristics that actually are things we might see in autism, because it might help us to understand how they might regulate. So in general, in autism, autistic individuals, it's not the case for everyone, but overall, autistic individuals really thrive from routine, having a rhythm and routine of things that are predictable. because when we know what's coming, our anxiety can be decreased. So what happens is I get overwhelmed. I feel that there's too much going on. So I'm going to fall back on what I already know. So for some of my kids, that might be walking around in circles, and they just walk in a spot so that they can think and they can process. They're doing something that's repetitive for their body, something that they know, something that's comfortable. And that's what we call stimming.
Okay. Clearly, your environment is very safe space with autistic children and for autistic children. And I'm hoping and praying that there are very many such environments around the country and globally as well. Because I'm not sure, but you would be able to give us that statistic. How many autistic children are born on an annual basis? Do we know the reasons why they are born with this condition? And at what age or stage of their lives do parents become aware that my child, and takes the child off to a doctor and then get the diagnosis that your child has autism?
Sure. So off the top of my head, I cannot remember the exact statistic, but we do, at the HEART program, we do neurodiversity training, and we take you through all of this information. But to kind of like put it in a nutshell, autistic individuals, where autism comes from, if we think about conditions in the brain, we have a section called neurodevelopmental conditions. So it's about how the brain develops over time. And autism is a neurodevelopmental condition, meaning that throughout the individual's life, autism will always be present. It's not like a disease or an infection or a sickness that you can catch. You're either born with autism or you're not, right? And there are a few causes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Amarta. Can it be cured? Like, when you talk about diabetes or any other condition, can it be cured? Certain conditions, we do know diseases can be cured, but certain can only be managed. And if well managed, a person can lead a very full or fulfilling life.
Oh, yeah. So, no, autism can't be cured. And I like to always think of it as there's nothing to cure because these individuals aren't broken. What I like to think is it's a different network that they're working on. So sometimes I explain it to my kids. If you know a PlayStation and you know an Xbox, you can play games on both of them. But I cannot put that PlayStation disc into the Xbox console because it's not going to read it. It's going to say, whoops, sorry, wrong file, or it's not going to read a disc. You know that Xbox drive is not broken now. It's just not picking up the right disc. And so it's very similar in a neurotypical brain, what we call our normal brain, for lack of a better word, and then our autistic brain. They're just two different operating systems. However, what you said there is very important, it's crucial, that management. If I don't have the right supports and I actually don't know the condition well, this child's not going to function very well because they've never actually been taught how to survive in the world that was not made for them. In fact, I think the Autism Sources slogan says it very nicely. They say helping square pegs fit into a round world. Everything in this world is like a little round hole, and these little pegs here are coming, they're just a different shape, and we're trying to understand how can we fit them in, but you can't put a square into a circle. So we try and make accommodations. Those accommodations are managing the sensory profile, managing the different ways that we actually enact inclusion, right? If we look at the statistics though of girls to boys, it's quite interesting. You'll see that for every for every 4 autistic boys, there's 1 autistic girl that's diagnosed. And that's something that if you're wanting to read into, it's called autistic masking. It's pretty much, as you can think, putting a mask on, pretending that I'm not autistic so that I can be, accepted by the world a bit better. And girls tend to do it better than boys do, just in general. So usually our boys get diagnosed more than girls. And so we see a much higher diagnosis rate in boys than in girls. We also see in functioning in mainstream schools, autistic girls on average tend to function better because they're masking. But the second they leave school, there almost seems to be like a crash. It seems very sudden, but if you understand the profile, you're like, oh, that's been building up for years. But they leave matric and all of a sudden they can't go to varsity, or they're struggling to go to classes, or they can't get a job because they're really just burnt out from having to hide their autistic traits for so many years.
So that brings me to the all-important question then. Are they, and because autism is on a spectrum from a very low to a very high, and you'll explain to us what that exactly means, autistic children, no 2 of them are alike. and obviously the caregivers and the parents would know how to deal with these children because it's their it's their child, and they learn to get to know their child, so they are best placed to deal with their child. That also means that not all children with autism are accepted in a mainstream school, depending on where they sit on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And that also then means that there is a huge challenge as far as educating these kids, access to healthcare and employment, because they're going to be living with autism for the rest of their lives. And
Yeah.
that's not in place for them. They're not going to have much of a life, are they?
Mm. It's something you could actually keep me here for the whole day to talk about, honestly. There's not enough support out there. What we see here is we've actually got the owner of Autism Resources, his wife actually started a learning center for autistic individuals because of that exact need that you're talking about. It's not a mainstream school. It's not registered as a school. They're called Malika House, and they do learning very differently so that we can look at the child's needs first before we look at education. Because the goal is, let's get these kids to be leaving school, let's give it that term, to leave school whole, understand who am I, what are my needs, what do I want to do with my life, what kind of support do I need. So you'll see we've got two profiles of autism. We've got Asperger's, and then one that's not known very often is PDA. That's called pathological demand avoidance. And if I put that very, very shortly, it's this individual, it's a form of autism where anxiety is incredibly high almost all the time. So the way that you address things can spike anxiety, and it can seem like very excessive meltdowns or very excessive shutdowns. Their behavior looks very reactive and intense. In those two profiles, your Asperger type autism is more likely to function in a mainstream school because they like their routines and rigidity. Doesn't mean that they will, but they're more likely to. Your PDA side of autism, those are the individuals who are slipping through the school system. They're falling through the cracks because they cannot function in a mainstream environment, because their sensory needs are not being taken care of. Their emotional needs, they're not understanding why they're so reactive. They're not understanding, maybe I need to learn in a different way. And I want to make it very clear, I'm not blaming the education system here. I think a big thing is not everyone has the right supports and the right understanding. And if I also think about a teacher in a classroom setting, if you have an ADHD kid and you have an autistic kid and you have a neurotypical, how do you match all those profiles in one class when you have maybe 20, 30 kids in your class, right? It makes it quite hard. So what you said, there's a lot of individuals who now maybe leave school and they're like, I actually don't know how to live. I don't know what to do. At Autism Resources, we don't just work with kids, we also work with adults. And I personally have worked with about 10 adults at Autism Resources, and out of those 10, one of them has a job. The other 9 are sitting at home, coming to our sessions so that they can make friends, so that they can meet other people and talk to people, because since they've left school, they have no one to talk to. They've never made friends, and they actually don't know what to do with their lives. So we're also helping with the resources of saying, okay, cool, what are your interests? What kind of jobs could you be a part of? And then helping them connect. One of the kids that, or rather adults that we know, he loves reading. He really wants to work in a bookstore. So we're trying to help him find a bookstore or a library that he can work in. And that's a lot of the gap that's also missing, that age from going from high school to becoming an adult. What do I do now? Because I've had help all my life. I've had psychologists, maybe I've had a therapist, I've had my parents, but now I'm 18 and there's other things expected of me.
So when we talk inclusion, we are talking systemic changes, and we know that here in South Africa, and I should imagine other countries as well, other needs seem to prioritize the needs of a person, a young child or an adult with autism, because it's really resource intense, is it not? I also worry and wonder about the parents of autistic children. They're not going to live forever. And there might come a time when this autistic child reaches adulthood and the parents then pass away. What happens to his or her future? And that's where the inclusion comes in, does it not?
Oh, 100%. I am sitting with teens and kids, autistic kids that I'm working with, whose families are asking me those exact questions right now. One kid in particular, I'm going to make up a name. I'm going to call her Callie. So Callie in particular comes to me and she's very happy. She's working on XYZ. Her parents are sitting saying, she's my only child. I am actually in my 60s already. I'm already thinking about retiring. I just want to know what happens to my daughter when we pass away. What happens now? Because we're here all the time to drop her off. When she has a really bad day, we'll come pick her up quickly. If she's not doing well in an environment, we'll go help her transition, ease in. And their questions are, since we're her trusted person, what happens when we pass away? Is my child just going to like cease to exist? And that's a really scary thought, not just as parents, but even people who support those individuals. What are we going to do for them? And so we've got a big dream, Malika House, Autism Resources, Heart Program. We work all together very closely. And we've got a big dream of what we want to build so that we can make a space where it's got an assisted living kind of scenario where we can help out individuals when they get older. But the honest truth right now is we don't have much. A lot of what we do have is only when the individual gets to a big, what you might call like a psychiatric break, or what you might call a breakdown. We only really have support right now for when things go really wrong. And that means booking the parent and the child into a psychiatric clinic so that they can both get therapy and rest at the same time. It's great that we have that. Ideally, we would have scenarios or things in place that make sure we don't get to that in the first place.
We're going to have to wrap up in a minute or two, and it is so sad. We're talking inclusion here. It is, Freedom Month, and we'd like to see all peoples of different colors, creeds, genders, and disabilities to enjoy the same freedoms in our country as you and I, able-bodied people, enjoy. And apart from enjoying, take it for granted on a daily basis. This normalization of our lives, we take for granted. And only when you raise these issues do we realize, they're people with huge challenges. So what can we, as fellow South Africans, what's the little bit, if we collectively, every one of us did one little something to lighten the burden of these parents or help in some way to fulfill the lives of not only children with autism, but children and human beings with different forms of disabilities?
I think the most powerful thing is we can educate ourselves. Education is one of the most powerful tools that we have out there. And I think things like, for example, on Autism Resources website, the owner himself, Yaku, he writes blogs about autism. So he'll write things about what does a meltdown mean, or what does it mean to be a parent with kids who are struggling, or there's a whole load of topics there. So check the Autism Resources website and you can look at Autism Resources South Africa and say, okay, what information is out there for me? You can look at Heart Program. There's other organizations out there that does neurodiversity training. I'd highly recommend go and learn up about it. Because when we learn and understand a bit more, number one, we are a bit more graceful to those around us and the behaviors we see. But I think we are also inadvertently supporting the parents, because now this parent doesn't only have to try and feel shameful for whatever behavior they've seen, but they also don't have to go and explain autism all over again to another person. I can only imagine how exhausting it must be as a parent every time you meet someone new or you go to a new scenario or situation to have to explain your child again as if there's some case study to go and look at. So I think the best we can do is go educate ourselves, go and say, let's try and understand whether it be autism, whether it be ADHD, whether it be any type of disability, or just knowing someone different to yourself. Let's go and try and educate ourselves about it. And then also just supporting the local businesses that want to support autistic individuals and neurodivergent individuals. Again, that comes back to Autism Resources. They actually have a place called Marketplace where they have local vendors from the area, or they have autistic people who make things like they crochet their own little teddies, or they make sensory fidgets that they want to be put on the shelves that can help individuals. They actually sell through Autism Resources. So also with just aside from the learning, you can go and support them by enriching their lives and helping them actually have a business.
Amarta Myeza, Program Manager at Heart, at the Heart Program Resources South Africa. And of course, we were talking, including people and children, especially with autism. Let's make this a more inclusive society, not only for children with autism, but children with all and different disabilities. Wonderful talking to you. Keep up the amazing work. And we do hope to hook up with you again sometime in the future. God bless.
Thank you so much, Julie. Have a lovely day further.
And you. It is exactly 12:38. We are moving along. Still 2 more interviews to go through. Our next guest is Loyiso Saliso, and she has lots to share with us as well.